Noortje. I'm a senior lecturer in sociology at Goldsmiths and convener of the program in digital sociology. This is Richard Rogers, author of Digital Methods.
So I'm a professor of new media and digital culture at the University of Amsterdam and currently a department chair in media studies at the same institution. And I run the Digital Methods Initiative also in Amsterdam.
Yeah, we're here to talk about your book, Digital Methods. I would like to start with a general question,
Sure.
Which is about computational methods, of which some people would say that they have been around for quite some time in cultural and social research in the form of statistical software or textual analysis programs. But in your book on digital methods, you claim a novelty for these methods. So what is that novelty and why is it important?
Generally speaking, what I'm trying to do with the digital methods book, or with this term, is a sort of double positioning move to make what you could call epistemological distinction. So the digital methods I coined as a term, or recoined as a term, as a counterpoint to virtual methods. So virtual methods is a strong but fairly recent research tradition in the social sciences, when the social sciences in some sense went online. But in fact, what happened when the social sciences took on the digital is they sort of imported methods, the kind of traditional social scientific instrumentarium, so participant observation, survey techniques, interviews, etc. And in fact, to do most of the studies of the online, they in fact went offline. So they visited cyber cafes and interviewed people in their homes, looked over shoulders of people searching the web, things like this. So this is the virtual methods tradition, whereas with digital methods, what I try to do is kind of, in some sense, return to the medium and try to take the medium seriously. Then the second move, so to speak, or what's the difference between digital methods and the computational tradition, is with the computational tradition, if you will, data is collected however it's collected. Some of the data collection is of course automated, others less so. And then it's put into software. So whereas digital methods tries to take seriously the methods of the medium, the computational tradition is more, let's call it generic desktop software work. So this is the move to sort of go back online and look at, in some sense, the methods of the medium. This is the novelty, or the claimed novelty.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question about the decision and the resolve to move back online. Because a lot of the social and cultural research that you refer to, in my understanding, they were very concerned to demystify the online, to show that the online has these offline dependencies,
Sure.
that it's really practice that enables and sustains online culture. And in your book, you seem less concerned with that, or you seem to be less concerned to disenchant the online, and you make a case for natively digital methods that are proper to the online, that belong online. But are you not reinstating some of the distinctions between on and offline that social and cultural researchers previously have been concerned to dismantle?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and so in the book I introduced a term called online groundedness, and this is my effort to become entangled in that debate about this kind of ontological distinction, and now what I've just introduced introduces a sort of epistemological distinction between, in some sense, online and offline methods, online and offline phenomena. So I think what the entry of the social scientists into the realm of online research, I think what they did is they introduced a kind of a sort of grounding principle where the findings were grounded in people's everyday realities, whether they're in the cyber cafe or they're in their home using a search engine, and what I introduced as a kind of problematic or as more of a question is can we make findings about society and culture with online data only? So can we ground what it is that we found in the online? And this is also a bit of a provocation, or this is a reaction, first of all, to the online offline distinction that I think was in terms of method was redone by the social scientists, if you will, in the virtual methods tradition. So this is my way of, in some sense, not only kind of commenting on it, but also positioning this work as something of, can we take what's happening online seriously? Can we study more than just online culture online? So most of the kind of digital media work that continue, or the internet-related research that continued from the cyberspace tradition, so didn't go down the social scientific route, but continued more in the kind of cultural studies tradition, we're just concerned with studying online culture in and of itself. And so my additional move was to try to introduce the idea of using online data to study cultural and societal phenomena, and then raise the question of whether we can ground our findings there. And I think that's where the social scientists would part company with me, perhaps.
Well, I can actually rephrase that very question in some way, in that digital methods as a research proposition claims a usefulness for online data that is about the social and the cultural. So we can use online data and study online phenomena and make claims about the social world and the cultural world. So there is a social cultural research ambition. Yet that ambition seems quite different from related arguments that are currently being made about big data. So big data is also about digital and in many cases network data, and it is also a ID or a claim that specifically proposes new ways for studying the social world and the cultural worlds. So because there is a similarity there between the big data argument and the digital methods proposition, I wondered if you could say something about what the differences are, or maybe the intended or unintended similarities between those two arguments.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So in the book there's a chapter, I think it's the last chapter, it's called Big Data, Small Data, or After Cyberspace, Big Data, Small Data, and so the proposition there is also similar to the big data proposition. That is that you can use data, online data, or data gathered from digital networks to study social and cultural phenomena. And I think what's different, well, there are a number of differences, but I think the first difference between digital methods approach and a kind of big data approach is the data proposition. So I think big data strives to collect quote unquote good data, and good data is data that's sort of captured as cleanly as possible over long periods of time, and is in some sense tries to be exhaustive, tries to be complete. Whereas if you look at a lot of online data, if you look at studying Facebook, studying Twitter, studying search engines, studying Wikipedia, a little bit less so, studying web archives, a lot of that stuff is not complete and has not been captured cleanly. And so it would, in some sense, would sort of fail spectacularly in terms of its goodness or its purity, or so that's the first thing. So we're taking on board the idea that the data is not necessarily structured, or probably can't. I mean, it could be partially, but can't be to the extent that the kind of big data science or data scientists would want it. So that's the first thing. So I think it's sort of a lot of online data kind of just does not meet those criteria. So what do you do then? Do you give up? So in the book I quote from Mike Thelwall, a 2005 piece on webometrics, where he argues that a lot of people just won't use online data. So big data won't use online data because it's not in the condition that it needs to be in order to do big data analysis. And then if you do use it, then you need to triangulate it with other data sets, and then you should ground your findings in the offline. So it's not a big data enterprise, digital methods. So yeah, I think that's how I'd like to answer.
I mean, there's one further aspect of digital methods as you present them in the book that strikes me, which is that digital methods, as you envision it, has a lot of time for devices. It pays a lot of attention to the devices of data collection, devices of data analysis, what are their features, what is their quirkiness. While big data debates, even though they are about digital data and by extension digital technology, quite quickly the debate will move on to the really big themes, such as a knowledge revolution or a revolution of how decisions are made in policy. And is that feature also important and deliberate for you in relation to digital methods, that it has a lot of time for the technical detail or the technical quirkiness and foregrounds the technical nature of the enterprise of working with doing research with the digital?
So let me just first come to the big data enterprise, or what the outputs of big data, because previously we were talking about the kind of collection, and which has to do with devices, which I'll come to in a second. But the outputs of big data, or what are the research outputs? I mean, and how are they different from digital methods research outputs? I think a lot of big data looks for pattern recognition. So, and when you look for pattern recognition, what you see is the familiar. So let's output this kind of massive graph and look at that cluster and recognize that cluster and be reassured that it is one. And it's a recognizable phenomenon, and then of course it looks for anomalies, right? And this is generally speaking, if we call it kind of database research, database work, those are the two things that oftentimes one looks for. Whereas, indeed, in the digital methods, we do not necessarily try to extract data from the device without taking into account device effects. So we're very cognizant of studying the devices for whether or not we can do research. The question is always, one of the questions is, when we're looking at devices, are we studying the devices, or are we studying social and cultural phenomena or where on the spectrum are we with this particular device? So when you look at a search engine, or when you look at Wikipedia, when you look at Facebook, so which of them currently, when you study their outputs, are more tilted towards studying the device itself or studying the platform itself, and which can you sort of tilt towards studying social and cultural phenomena. So yeah, we pay attention to the devices in that sense as well.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that digital methods as an argument does not stop at the point where data are not raw. It doesn't only say there is no such thing as raw data. It also questions the cleanness or the cleanliness that is presumed in relation to data. So I think that notion of dirty data or device contaminated or device dependent data is really interesting. And if I try to think why would a social or cultural researcher put up with dirty data, your book also gives I think a clear response to that question, because there's something that you get in return for accepting this lack of cleanliness of data, which is that you argue that networked digital devices have a certain flexibility to them and an adaptability. That means that if you accept their contribution to the organization of the research process, you will get something in return. Namely, you can repurpose these devices for your own ends, or you can adapt them to your own research objectives. So there is a give and take to digital methods. But I wondered if you could say more about the specificity of networked devices or networked digital devices when it comes to these possibilities for repurposing. I mean, isn't it that media researchers or researchers working with media technologies, say television, in the past also had these kind of considerations? Or is there something special about digital devices when it comes to the capacity for repurposing or their adaptability?
Okay, so there are a couple of points. So the first one is that in the history of media research, there has been this divide, what I've just sketched previously. That is, are we studying the medium, or are we studying culture, or society through the medium? So television studies, you could imagine studying, as Raymond Williams did, flow as a sort of medium study, as media studies or medium studies. So how one program is followed by a commercial, is followed by a program, and that sort of brings the viewer in. Or you can study what's happening in society and culture by looking at the programming from a different perspective, looking at the TV guide, for example. Similarly, you can repurpose the TV guide. You can repurpose the closed captions for the hearing impaired to do textual analysis of the news. So you can do this sort of work also with these other medias, but with digital media, it's always been associated with this re prefix, right? And I'm sort of using it like that. So resampling, reusing are these rewords that have been at the core of recent copyright debates, and recycling media, recycled. So this is one of the features of the digital or of new media, which I remember a new media artist a number of years ago, and I also repurposed this or reappropriated it and to define new media as putting things on top of other things from the famous Monty Python sketch a number of years ago. So it is associated with the and the question for me is then the research. So how do you do research with these devices? And this is why I use the term repurposing. So to come at the online and online devices as a site for the research possibilities, research opportunities that may have been impossible or improbable without the digital, without the online, and then specifically looking at the devices, and so search engines and also their techniques, whether it's crowdsourcing, taxonomy, and then trying to think about, okay, so what could we do with this to turn it into something interesting for social research? So trying to bring a kind of research imagination to these devices.
I would like to ask a further question about this, but then looking at some of the critiques of this intellectual agenda for digital, social, and cultural research. Because I think a lot of the debates in digital sociology, digital humanities, have focused on these issues about repurposing, reappropriation of digital data and devices and its possibility. Is it really possible to appropriate digital data or digital devices for purposes other than those that it has been designed to fulfill? And there are, I think, 2 points that I wanted to put to you. One is about the sort of flexibility, endless adaptability of digital devices like search engines, where they do, one of their special or distinctive features is that they do not serve a particular stable set of objectives. Rather, the purposes are always shifting, they're flexible, they're adaptable, algorithms are continuously updated. So there is a sense that the repurposability of digital devices is part of their the very political economy that they instantiate. And a second related point, which also has to do with the creeping purposes of digital devices, where they may have certain stated purposes, but then there are a whole range of other purposes that they may also fulfill. Like students recently talked to me about data tourism and their concerns with data spectatorship as one of these purposes of digital data tools. So there are these problems with questions of, or with the politics of repurposing.
Yeah.
How do you engage with those, or how do they?
So digital methods is certainly concerned with medium critique. So there are a series of chapters in the book as well that discuss at length search engine critique, for example, and we can talk about any platform or any device or any object along these lines, and I often do. But what I wanted to do with some of the techniques that are described in the book is in some sense move beyond the mere or only the critical stance, and see what else we can do with for example a search engine. In the chapter search as research, a number of ways of repurposing the search engine, Google's web search, as well as Google's image search, as well as Google's blog search, are discussed, and first I introduced a kind of critical inquiry into Google's epistemology or the ranking or the results ranking by talking about a particular research practice that is collecting search engine results over time, and looking at, in some sense, the changes to an actor's standing in engine results on the basis, looking at the changes on the basis of different Google algorithmic updates. So you can see quite clearly that particular Google updates, which are in some sense, sort of user experience inspired, consumer inspired, very very much in the political economy realm, combating spam, combating engine fodder, these sorts of things. So that is also part of the research practice of looking at the effects of the political economy of the engine on the results, and on actor standing. But apart from that, we also were looking into the extent to which we could take search engine results and do something else with them. For example, create a kind of bias detection machine, and see whether we could, by using different search operators, like the cite : query in Google, whether we could take that particular query and turn it into something where we could see the extent to which climate change skeptics are mentioned on particular websites and not on other ones, and thereby see which websites are skeptic friendly, or at least the skeptics have an impact on those websites. So it's very very simple but yet kind of powerful pieces of software that are built on top of Google, or on top of the devices, which perform, or which enable quite modest forms of social research. So in some sense, it's the effort is to be critical indeed, but also to move beyond that every once in a while.
Yeah, I'm interested in probing this beyond critique a bit further, because it strikes me that quite a lot of the digital methods case studies, especially the more well-known ones, have a strong emphasis on the empirical. So you mentioned the climate skeptics study using Google, but there's also the issue animals study by Niederer and Weltevreden and yourself around iconic species in different networked spheres. And those different case studies each suggest that there are findings to be made, that there are these fairly detailed matters about, for instance, is this skeptic associated only with secondhand smoke or also with genetically modified corn, that these kind of very detailed matters are of critical importance. So there is a kind of a critical empiricism, or at least an imagination of a critical empiricism in digital methods work, which is in some ways remarkable, because if you look at debates in social and cultural theory about the future of critique, that's not necessarily the example that is most mentioned or most prominent.
No.
That this kind of detailed empiricism. So how come this faith in this critical capacity of the empirical, also in a time where we see you could say a renaissance of naive empiricism, if you will, where there's a lot of faith in data in broader culture. So what is this critical empiricism? How can it survive?
well,
or
first.
make its point.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, first, I think it's important to think of digital methods as one approach among many in the digital humanities and social sciences, and perhaps as a particularly distinctive one. You can put it next to other ones, and cultural analytics, culturomics, and webometrics, and discuss their commitments to their differing commitments to the empirical, their differing commitments to a kind of critical kind of empiricism. And I think digital methods is distinctive vis-a-vis those other traditions, and I think its distinctiveness perhaps lies in in the fact that it's also conceptual. So it's conceptual in the sense that it makes a series of moves about data, about online culture, about technique, about tools, about online method, about the outcomes of studying online method. So in that sense, I think it positions itself in this debate quite differently from some of these other traditions, which themselves are also empirical. So I mean, I could get into the details, but I just wanted to make that overall point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, it's quite difficult to have a good discussion about theory when we're also talking about digital research, but I still can't resist to bring up this topic of theory because as I briefly mentioned just now, this notion of the end of theory, the belief that we can have data driven or device-led research, all these kind of ideas seem to create quite a, well, you could say, tough climate for theory. Theory is not in a particularly comfortable position in that context. Yet it seems that digital methods draws quite strongly on traditions of social and cultural theory. So notions like the devices participate in organizing social and cultural phenomena for research. So it's never just the data that we encounter as social and cultural researchers, there's always a device mediation. Or notions around device cultures, that somehow there's something irreducibly cultural about doing research with technology. I mean, to me those are quite theoretical propositions, and how much are they part of digital methods as a practice or as an agenda for you? Those kind of ideas, like how do they?
Well, I think digital methods has made some conceptual, maybe can we call it theoretical, but some conceptual contributions. And these are notions that then open up avenues for further thought. So one is this notion of device cultures, and in the book, and I sort of pulled out it's page 126, I think, where I term the interaction between user and engine, the data that are collected, how they are analyzed, and ultimately the URL recommendations that result, device cultures. What that's meant to point to is that all of the results that come out of these devices have come out that are recommended by these devices are recommended on the basis of some sort of user interaction. So we are not. So the device culture notion is introduced to, in some sense, separate the output of medium devices from that of sort of traditional information retrieval, or like, let's say, library systems, which were based more on sort of like, you know, document keyword matching, metadata, whereas most of the output of online devices is in part based on what is termed registrational interactivity. So as you interact with it, it is sort of collecting data, registering choice, and matching and looking at preferences, a series of signals, your history, geography, etc. And then outputting stuff. So in order to study the outputs, the data, I think you need to study the device culture. I mean, so this is a kind of conceptual. It's also an empirical warning, right? So it's but it's, so there are some other terms as well, and they function. They could be said to function theoretically, but they're also they're invitations to complicate, in some sense, either data collection or data analysis, possibly theoretically.